if you are right, doing something for the wrong reason, right?
Doing the right thing for the wrong reason.
It does no, it's just doing something for the wrong reason. Period, right? Like even if you think it's right, deep down you know it's the wrong thing. It's just you really trying to marry density. You're trying to really hard hold on to density,
That's a good way to put that.
right? So if if somebody's exit point lies in this time and space, because right now a lot of people start to exit, like mass exiting, right? But it is because they want to hold on to the interpretation of density that Earth held into its space. And because Earth is basically opening the Pandora's boxes, personalized boxes, like it is ripping them open, right? I don't want to sound negative about it. It's actually great. But you have to work with what does it look like to have my box be ripped open, right? Nobody wants that, right? You've been trying to hold that box, but you will not have the ability to be held closed. Like that lock that you were able to keep on locking as it like pops open and you like push it back down and you lock it back up and you throw the keys and the keys appears magically in there and then it pops itself open and you're like, what's happening? Yeah, the lock will just disappear. So there's not even like, a way to keep that lid on. And so for those who will continue to choose to hold on to that density, it will just be so hard. It will be incredibly hard to where the amount of effort that it will take to dig yourself back down and start creating the density that is not there will be excruciating and painful. Did I say playful or
You said painful.
okay, painful and playful. So depending on where you look at it, right? So those people exit points from the etherical standpoint of interpretation, they will be playing in the playground of what does it look like for me to fight for the density that is no longer there. And that's their playground. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, that holds a lot of caveats for the rest of the population
Right.
who'd be like, wait, what kind of experience is this person having?
Right. But it's, it has ripple effects out to other people too.
Well, if you don't,
It can have ripple effects out.
So one, for those who are like, oh, okay, look, here's where I am. Like everything is being shut off and these boxes are being popped open. And all of a sudden I have to face all these stuff. And then you're constructively and productively opening, releasing, letting go, shaking it off like a deer or, doing Qigong shaking or you're, running and then quantitatively realizing that, you're trying to basically restore this flow. You're trying to allow yourself to restore into that flow. That is a very productive way forward that has actualization into the reality of truth, right? And that will be your truth. And what does it look like for me to adapt into the new frequency? And for everybody else, their playground will be what does it look like for me to play into, continue to hold density that is no longer providing the space for that density. Do you see what I mean?
Say that last part again.
There you go. Imagine you are in the sand box, in the sand pit, and there's an immense amount of sun, right? No, I'm sorry. First, it rained, right? Like for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's been raining. So that sand pit has been very, very wet, and you were able to build these beautiful structures. Like sandcastles are easy to build whenever the wet sand is wet, right? And so you held all these structures because the sand has been incredibly wet, like, and it's just been raining and raining and raining and raining, and you have been very used to playing in a sandbox with wet sand, right? Now all of a sudden the sun is shining a lot, and that sand is no longer getting wet, especially at the top of the surface. It's just like, fluid nature of reality, right? Like lighter frequency to where the sand is just like, woo, you throw it in, the wind picks up and carries it off, and there's no structure, right?
Yep.
But if you dig deep enough, right? You might still find some wet sand. So for a lot of times, anytime this fluid nature of being, anytime the reality of structure gets, or unstructured structure gets to be too much for us, we start digging into the depth to find the wet sand, right? But sooner or later, you're like, oh no, but I want to be in the new playground where now I play with this fluid sand. I will get to make drawings in the sand, right?
Right.
And I'll have a different interface with the same substance that is sand.
Yeah, you can't do the little Zen sand thing.
You can.
With wet sand.
Oh yeah, right. So now you're
Yeah.
in that fluidity, playing with sand quite differently than you used to.
Yeah.
The substance is still the same, but your personal interface with the reality or the density of that structure is different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wet sand versus dry sand. So for those who are came here to awaken and then have the interface of, oh, I will go from playing with wet sand to all of a sudden playing with dry sand, and that is my experience. That is my quantum leap into interpretation of reality. I would say you and I are kind of on that plane, right?
Yeah.
And that is the road that we have been going, and that is the path that we have chosen.
And wet sand is literally less dense than, I'm sorry, dry sand is literally less dense than wet sand, to continue this metaphor.
Dry sand
Is less dense.
is less dense.
Yeah.
Yes, so that metaphor stretches all the way through, as it were. And so yes, and then will be the group of people who came here partially as a choice into sticking with still trying to interpret dry sand, the fluid sand, as wet sand.
Maybe in this metaphor, they're peeing on the dry sand to make it wet.
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know. But right. So there will be a group of people who will spend a chunk of their time
trying to make sandcastles out of dry sand.
Trying to make sandcastles out of dry sand.
Which is a very frustrating thing to do.
Yeah. Right. And then they will have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper in order to at first try to see if they can find the density. And I don't know how long that process is, how many years it will take them to figure out that that's not an interface that this plane of existence can be held in.
In this metaphor, if you dig up some wet sand in the baking sun,
it will become dry.
It doesn't stay wet for long.
No. Right. So, and let's be honest, the longer we will stay in this interface, which we will, that's forward.
Yeah. The less wet sand there is, period.
The less wet sand, because the sand
Eventually
will just continue to be dry and dry and dry and dry. And there will be no wet sand. Nowhere down at the bottom will there be wet sand.
Yeah. On the beach, somewhere, if it rained, a few days ago, you dig down, you'll get some wet sand. But I imagine in the middle of the Sahara, where it hasn't rained in 100 years, you can dig all the way down and there's just no wet sand. Maybe it's cool because the sun isn't hitting it, but it's not wet.
No. Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah. No, but that's basically the metaphor, is that there will be people whose game here is to continue to find dense sand and play in the old playground of old structures, because that's all they have gotten used to. And then, so one, if you think about it, through this idea of repetition, that is what they're comfortable with, and that is where they want to play in. And then, then the question that they will have to ask themselves is, how long do I want to play? Because it will be difficult, right? It will be difficult to continue to build old structures in the new paradigm.
Right. How long do I want to keep playing the old game?
Well, but it will get progressively more difficult.
That doesn't work.
It will be progressively more difficult. Think about it. The sand will continue to dry and dry and dry and dry.
It's a good metaphor.
No, I can't take credit for it. So